episode 038 with Gina Mo. Hello and welcome to One Voice Can Change the World podcast. I'm so thrilled that you're here, and I'm very excited to share with you my very first guest of 2020, Gina Mo. And I'm really excited to share with you the work that she's been doing in helping entrepreneurs deliver their message confidently. Now, I'd like to let you know that this episode was brought to you by SG Home Loans and also Learning Blocks Early Learning Centres. So how has your 2020 begun? How's it going for you? I hope you've had a good start to the year. And for me, I've had a pretty good start to the year. As some of you may know, I had an operation in November, late November, and I've had to have 8 weeks off in recovery, and this is my 10th week and I'm feeling amazing. I'm feeling really, really good. If you haven't heard my last episode, which is 037, it's based on how I'm trying to improve my movement, improve my nourishment for my body and also my mind. And I talk about a planner that I created. It's a 6-week planner for singers and performers to just jot down, how they're singing, how they're moving, how they're nourishing, and how their mindset is. So there's a Thriving Singer planner that you can download for free. It's on my show notes in the last episode, so you're welcome to download that. It's a really, really good one. I've had people commenting on how they're tracking their food better and their water intake, and also their mindset as well, because there's a few affirmations that you can put into place as well every day. So we're kind of focusing on every single day. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's a good way to just get started and get that momentum going. So that's available for you to download for free. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Gina Molinari, who is affectionately known as Gina Mo. She is a confident communications coach, and she helps purpose-driven female entrepreneurs to get clear and confident in being the face of their business so that they can create the consistency that it takes to create momentum, results, and impact with their work. Welcome to One Voice Can Change the World podcast. I'm your host, Tina Bangle, vocal coach and professional vocalist. In each episode, we bring you an inspiring person doing wonders in the music industry today. We hope to give you motivating messages to help you navigate towards your musical dreams. I'm so grateful you're here, and now let's give you something to sing about. Well, welcome, Gina. Thank you so much for being part of the One Voice Can Change the World podcast. We're finally here.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm trying to remember. You and I met officially, 5 years ago now?
Yeah. I was thinking, it would have been 5 years. Well, I've been part of School of Greatness for that long. I think 6 years now.
Yeah. Well, so it took us a year to actually meet in person, but we knew each other online before that. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a while.
I know, and I really loved spending time with you in New York, and that was the first time that I had Shake Shack. Was it Shake Shack that we went to?
Yes. And that's the original one. That's the original one, apparently.
Yeah, I love that. I love New York. Do you miss it? Because you originally are from New York, right?
Well, I'm originally from New Jersey, just outside New York City, so I'm used to New York. But I gotta say, part of the reason I moved was because it wasn't really what I thought it was going to be, and I didn't love it nearly as much. I miss, some of the conveniences and being close to family and all those sorts of things. But the best part of living in New York to me was being able to say I lived in New York.
Yeah.
So sometimes I miss it, but for the most part, I'm pretty happy where my feet are.
Oh, great. So where are you now? Are you in Ohio?
I am in Columbus, Ohio now, yes. So I've lived here about 4 years. May will be 4 years.
That's quick. I remember when you first moved there.
I know. That's what I'm saying. You and I have known each other a while now.
Yes. Yeah, so good. So tell us how you got started with singing, because originally you were an opera singer.
Yes, so my undergraduate degree is a Bachelor of Arts in Music with a vocal primary from Westminster Choir College, which isn't a conservatory, but it's conservatory-like. It's very music focused. I didn't take a single academic class, one of those sorts of environments. And I had always loved singing as a kid. I was always singing along with my Disney movies and just always humming something like that. And, when I was 12, when I was eligible to take voice lessons, I noticed that the teacher I had really wanted to challenge me. She's like, let me just give you these 24 Italian songs and arias and kind of see how you do, because she was classically trained. And I just had an affinity for it. I really loved the challenge of singing in a foreign language. And my voice sounded really great doing it. It felt really good because it was so healthy to sing that way. And I just kind of ran with it. But what I never really faced properly was the fact that I've always had this performance anxiety, really terrible, debilitating performance anxiety, to the point where both my parents work from home. My father has a practice in the basement for a chiropractor, and my mother is a case manager for an insurance company. So they both work at home in this relatively small house, and I wouldn't practice unless they were far out of earshot or not home at all. And even practicing was something that I had a lot of stress over. And so it was very interesting to have such a love and a talent for something that ultimately I just kind of ignored the fact that I was terrified of doing it. And when it came to, being up in a balcony or something like that, that was far easier. When the eyes weren't on me, it was far easier. But that's really how I got into it, was just kind of noticing that, well, I had this natural love for it. It's something I enjoy doing. And then I did the lessons and I really grew with it. So, okay, let's see what we go from there. And that was where I got into college with it.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that you bring up a really important point, because there are some kids that just love to sing, but they don't necessarily want to put themselves out there like what you see, on the big stage. Or some kids, they don't want to go and enter competitions and things like that, because they just want to keep it for themselves. So I think that's a really important thing to notice and be aware of.
Well, I think the sort of assumption from me, it's not like I was forced into it by any means. That was the interesting thing, is I kind of forced myself, because I thought, well, if I'm talented at it and I seem to love it, this fear makes no sense. I have to force myself through it, is essentially what, because I thought it only, especially as a classical singer, I thought it could only look one way. I thought it had to be the corsets and the wigs and the drama on stage. I thought that's what it had to look like. And so I just kind of pigeonholed myself of where I got to go, having that history. And it's okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to push through and figure it out. But when I got to school, it became so evident to me how different my fellow students felt about music, and how they felt about auditioning and, practicing their craft and doing it in front of other people. And I was like, oh, I do not feel that way. I do not feel that way at all. And so I started, kind of experimenting with what was comfortable for me. But I could count on one hand how many times I actively went to an audition that I actually followed through on. It just was something I never wanted to do. So I avoided it like the plague.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I remember I have an old interview of a friend of mine called Ellie O, and she's a Korean opera singer. So she was on The Voice a while back, I think maybe 2014 or something, or maybe even later than that. But she was an opera singer, but she wanted to transition into pop music. And the reason why she wanted to do that is because she didn't like the atmosphere and then the environment that the opera stage brought,
Culture. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, the culture. Yeah. So she would, perform in front of very wealthy people, and she was like, she didn't want it. She didn't want that anymore. So tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah, so after a lot of soul searching, after kind of the trauma of realizing that I needed to step away from music, it's made this evolution into communication coaching. And, I've called it a bunch of different things over time, but essentially that's what it is. It's helping people who are in online-based businesses and get really clear on what it is they do, and communicating the value of what they do, and really being able to do that as the face of their business too. So there's a lot of public speaking elements to it. It's being able to go on an interview like this and feel confident in yourself and really have faith that what you're going to say is the right thing to say or the perfect thing to say, and not worrying about and ahhing and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also about just general being the face of your business, like being a figurehead and what that means to do that, like to find the clarity in that, to find the confidence in that, and then ultimately the consistency. And the sort of first, and I think this is when you and I met, was my original business was coaching musicians how to be entrepreneurs, because that's what I realized we lacked. We lacked this education and this experience of how to run ourselves as a business. I didn't get that education when I was in school. I don't know how to do my own taxes. I don't know how to, go out there and network to meet the right people to get in front of the auditions that I wanted to be in. I didn't get taught any of that. And I thought, well, how do we communicate the value of what we do in a way that explains that we're so much more than just, a monkey with symbols that you wind up in the corner? Like, how do you explain that to somebody and create a life for yourself as a business in a way that doesn't feel like you're selling out, in a way that doesn't do you a disservice? Because I feel like musicians and artists in general, we get attached to this story that it has to be hard. We have to be starving. We have to sacrifice so much for our art. And it doesn't have to be that way, really. But it's because that's what we're fed, and we're not taught any differently. So that was sort of my first step into that world and into this entrepreneurship and marketing space, because ultimately, even though communication is my tool, I'm a marketing coach. It's about marketing yourself. It's about the value you bring to the table, to your clients, to the world.
It's really interesting that you speak about that, because that's one of the things that I struggled with, is speaking in front. Like, I could sing, but speaking about, and it was only because nobody taught me. I think it's like something that some people just have it, but other people, they kind of need to learn how to do that. And that's something that I struggled with, even like introducing my songs, to people, to the audience. I wish somebody said, this is how you introduce your song. You don't have to say the same cliche things all the time. But yeah, even hopping on a podcast like this as well.
Well, you're exactly right. We're not taught how to do it. And we think because you're used to a microphone in front of you, that it's equivalent, that it's the same. Oh, speaking is, so much easier than singing, right? Not really, because you're really putting yourself in a more vulnerable place. Singing, you're a character. You can put on a facade if you chose to. For me, and this is why I had the exact opposite stress, where singing to me is incredibly like anxiety inducing, but the speaking isn't. And it's because with speaking, I feel like I can step into those acting skills easier for myself and step into this really confident space. Whereas with singing, because of that deep, deep breath connecting to my body, I felt so vulnerable and I felt so exposed. Not to mention, the actual physical, I had a lot of self-esteem issues in my physical body. So having all eyes on me when you're trying to breathe as deeply into your gut and like everything's all hanging out and everything. I mean, I wanted to be so technically perfect that I sacrificed the performance of what I did. And that was where there was so much anxiety, is I wanted it to be right. I wanted it to be good. And I would rather sacrifice the performance for the musical element of it being way better and higher level. And some people function the opposite way, where they'd much rather be the performer instead of getting it musically right, because they're in the moment and they want to entertain. My mom's like that, actually. She's a belly dancer. And she, loves to dance and do her thing, but she's more about entertaining and, performing than she is about getting everything just right. It's just very interesting. Like, everybody's got their own sort of neuroses around how they do it.
Yeah, and you're right about having that story as well. So my story has always been, I was always shy as a young child, so I wouldn't speak out. That's my story. And I'd let people talk over the top of me. So when I sung, people stopped and listened. And it was just easy for me. And it was like, oh, wow, you're listening. You're not talking over the top of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's funny because now that you say that, I'm thinking about my own experience. I'm the baby of an Italian family. We're pretty loud and boisterous when we all get together. And so I was also kind of used to being talked over, just because that's the nature of what we do. Not a disrespect thing necessarily, but just I'm the youngest, and you don't yell, you don't get heard. And so the pressure of everybody stopping to listen was scary. You know, the pressure of finally having that moment, like, oh God, am I going to do the right thing? Is it going to be good enough? Is it going to be, you know, like all those thoughts start to go through your head. That's so interesting. I never thought about it that way until you just said that.
Yeah, yeah. No. So, what are some of the 3 tips that you have for people like me who want to share their story on podcasts or TV interviews or anywhere where they have to communicate who they are and what they do?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a couple things. So 3 things I'm happy to give you. So the first thing is to get so clear on why it's important to you to talk in the first place. You want to call it vision or mission or whatever that is. I mean, why are you speaking in whatever sort of scenario you're in? You know, if you're you know, this podcast, for example. So for you to share this podcast and create the space for people to share their stories and things, why does this matter to you? Because no matter how introverted you are, no matter how scary it may seem, the why really drives you and connects you to that deeper passion place for yourself that makes it hard to not get excited. It makes it hard to not have some of that fear dissipate. And the second thing is to really just sort of change your relationship with fear. I don't believe in fearlessness. I think everybody has fear. It's just maybe yours look very different from mine. So you appear fearless to me, but that's not true. That's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
So if we're waiting to be fearless, to take action or to do these things, it's just never going to happen. So instead of telling ourselves that we're so afraid or all the reasons that we are afraid because we're going to mess up or be judged or whatever, it's I'm so afraid because I want to do it justice. I'm so afraid because this means so much to me. And so it kind of, again, lessens the blow of that and it becomes less scary. And then we can reestablish that as excitement, because the experience of excitement and fear in your body is the same. There's the trembling, there's the butterflies and shortness of breath and all of those things. So why not just allow ourselves to change that mindset and switch it and say, you know what, I'm actually excited. And this is why, is because it matters to me. And because you already sat down to really think about why it matters to you, that becomes easier to tap into instead of lying to yourself about, oh no, I'm just excited. Ah! You know, you don't want to do that. That's not helping do either. Because you shouldn't force those things. It's a matter of finding something for yourself. And then the third thing I would say is to give yourself some sort of crutch. And I know that some people say that, you know, a crutch is a bad thing because it means you're relying on something to get the job done. But the way I see it is that when you sprain your ankle, you break your leg, whatever that is, you need those crutches to build your strength up. And the idea is not to use them forever, because if you do, then yeah, you're going to lose a lot of muscle use in your leg and you're not going to be able to walk the same ever again if you don't eventually start to use them. But for the time being, while it's hard, while it's painful, while it's scary, that crutch can be the thing that gets you started and to really allow you to step into this new uncomfortable place. So it's not as a crutch to stay there forever, but it's a crutch to just get you over the hump of fear. You know, it's like they say with the gym, like the hardest part is getting to the gym, right? Once you're there, you're fine. It's a similar premise where, okay, if you just get over that first hurdle of the fear that you're experiencing, a lot of times you realize it's not so bad. So whatever that crutch is for you, if it is, you know, kind of singing privately to yourself or dancing or kind of visualizing somebody who you really love or are motivated by giving you a pep talk, whatever that looks like, that's what you get to do to use as a crutch to then move forward and grow from there. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with having some sort of anchor to just give yourself that chance. It's a life preserver in a way.
And you're helping people with TED Talks now, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how's that going? Yeah, TEDx.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily coach people into getting a TEDx because that's actually a whole different thing, but I am a TEDx coach for like the local events where they have them and they assign coaches and things. And it's so rewarding because the thing that stresses people out about a TEDx talk, I mean, these are volunteer opportunities. People don't get paid for them, but because of the platform, they know that this is something that will live on forever. They know this is not something that, you know, if they shut their business down, they could just pull it off YouTube and it would be like TED has control of this footage, so they want to do it justice. And even though they originally apply with this fantastic idea, there's still the pressure of all of a sudden realizing that you potentially have a world stage. Because what gets people from TEDx Talks, which are locally sanctioned events with a private license that TED gives you, to a TED Talk, like the official big stage, is the marketing that you put behind it, is the ability for you to gain organic traction with your TEDx talk and your topic. Okay, were you interesting enough? Were you engaging enough that this actually gained traction? Because they don't throw marketing money at it. They don't have any sort of strategy. It's your responsibility when you get a TEDx talk, and they'll give you the footage, they'll give you the YouTube footage, and be able to put it out there for you with professional editing and all of that. But it's your responsibility to make something happen. So like Simon Sinek, he had that incredibly powerful, Brene Brown as well, their TEDx talks then graduated to TED Talks because of that. And those are the ones that get featured on the main platform. So that's something that some people don't know, is that it's really your responsibility. And so if you don't do this great job, you may not have that opportunity again. And that pressure comes in of like, oh God, it's got to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It does have to be, your best work that day. Like any other musician though, right? It can't be perfect. It's just, you got to give your best on that day. And so coaching people into that in a way that's exciting for them instead of so scary is a lot of fun for me.
And take us through how you go about coaching somebody. Like, what are the elements of your coaching?
Yeah, well, so TEDx is a little bit different because people come in knowing what they want to talk about. But generally speaking, when I do it with other clients who are looking to do their keynote for the first time, or they're looking to really get clear on their messaging and their brand and things, the first thing I start with is that mindset work. Because even though I'm not a mindset coach, I've done a significant amount of emotional intelligence work in the last 4 or 5 years. You've probably witnessed my transformation as a result of it.
Yes.
And being able to really dive into somebody's mindset and get clear on, okay, what drives you? What are you really afraid of? What's important to you? If we're clear on that, then we can create a strategy. We can use word choices and get to the real clear root of, this is really what I want people to walk away with. Because ultimately, whether you're writing a book, whether you're doing a keynote speech, whether you're creating your marketing for your company, there's got to be some sort of major takeaway, like a thesis statement, I always like to call it, like from an essay in high school. I don't know if you guys had to do those. We had to do personal essays where you would have an introduction with your thesis statement, which is basically the 1 or 2 sentences of what the whole thing's about, right? And then the 3 points to support it with a conclusion. So I was like, okay, if your speech, if your marketing, if your book is one of those essays, what is your thesis statement? What do you want people to be walking away with? Because that's the idea that you have to keep coming back to. We could go off on the rails about so many different things. We're also knowledgeable from many experiences we've had in life, our education, all these things. But instead of going off into the weeds, let's just focus on one thing. What is the one thing that's the most important to you to get out? And if I dive into, okay, if this is the thing you want people to learn, why do you want people to learn that? Is it a personal connection to it? Usually it's a personal connection to it in some way, shape, or form, whether it's, individually personal or because you experience it with a family member, a loved one of some kind. But getting into that and being able to tap into that again and again when it gets challenging is easier to kind of come back to the things. So the first thing we start with is that mindset. And then depending on what it is we're creating, from there we start to build the bones of it. And when we start to build the bones of it, then we can kind of fill in the blanks. And then ultimately, just like being a musician, practice. Because the more you practice, the more comfortable you get with it. That you're describing introducing your songs and things. If you practice those, if you knew how you wanted to practice those, they wouldn't be so awkward when you get to do them. And it's not even that he experiences it as awkward. You experience it as awkward, which is often the more troubling part, because everybody else will tell you, oh, you did fine, you did great. But if you don't feel good about it, it's not going to matter. You're just going to continue to tell yourself that story that it's not good enough, that it's you and all over yourself, you trip over your words. I can't tell you how many people I meet that do a fantastic job and then they come up to me and they're so hard on themselves about how they did. Oh, it was terrible. I messed this up. I forgot this. We didn't know any of that. It's your experience. So it's really getting clear on the fact that this is my experience that I'm really cultivating for my own confidence, not necessarily for the outside, at least to begin with.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And anything else, or that's basically...
it's a lengthy process. It sounds like, but it's a lengthy process.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's really cool, because I have something, somebody invite a friend of mine, one of my students' grandmother, invited me to speak for International Women's Day. And she said, it's going to be like a TEDx talk. And then I'm like, I've never done something like that.
So it's going to be like a TEDx talk because what? It's like 8-10 minutes.
Is it normally an 8 to 10 minute thing, TEDx, or
TED Talks are
17?
often not longer than 20 minutes. The average
Okay.
is like 8 to 12 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. So, I was like, I said, yes, I'll do it because that's something that I want to focus on this year, is to kind of speak more and combine the singing with it as well. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to do that side of things. And yeah, but I was going to ask you, like, it's like practicing a song, right? You just keep doing it and doing it. Do you normally practice, like, do people normally practice bit by bit, or like the whole thing from beginning to end?
I think like music, it can go, it just kind of depends on what you're working on and how you function. So it can be effective to do, I'll use the music analogy here, right? So it can be effective to do 4 measures, get those 4 measures great, and then do 8 measures total, like adding the 4 to the next 4 sort of thing. Or
Yes.
to just go 4 and then 4 and like keep moving on and then start to blend them together, maybe by a verse or something. I mean, it can be, but it also depends on the length of whatever it is you're working on. If you're doing that with like a 2-hour long keynote, that can kind of be hard to go through it the whole time. You might want to practice it in chunks. And the other thing that's really helpful, and again, is sort of a musical thing, is if somebody were to heckle you, if they were to distract you, if there's a baby crying in the background, you want to make sure that you're settled. So if you don't lose your spot, because you had to stop and you're so used to just going through the whole thing, how are you going to know where to jump back in? Kind of like a video game. Like if you die at a certain level, there was the checkpoint to go back to. You need a checkpoint at some point. You need to be comfortable with that. So there should always be, especially if it's lengthy, there should always be chunks that you've done and maybe running that all the way through. But I mean, ultimately, yeah, it's breaking it down into little pieces, running longer pieces of it in stretches until it's so in your DNA that you can improvise in the moment, that you can do some embellishments and accoutrement in the moment because you feel like it, right? Like you get that emotional sort of connection to the audience and you're like, oh, that I'm going to do this little trill up here. And you wouldn't normally do that, but you're just feeling it. That's the same thing with speaking. It's connecting to the energy of the audience, reading the room, and because you're so well rehearsed, you're comfortable to riff on it a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's exciting. I feel hopeful with it.
Well, and that's the thing people worry about, is they're like, I don't want to sound over rehearsed. I want to come off the cuff and natural.
Yes.
The way to do that is to practice it until it becomes that way again, until you're literally not even thinking about it. It's just in your DNA. It's just in your bones. You know what's coming next. You're not thinking about it like it's some sort of marquee you're across, right? Yeah, that's the thing, is when you're like in this medium practice zone that you sound rehearsed and, just it sounds canned.
Yeah. That's very helpful. Thank you for that. So this is something that the next few questions are things that I normally ask the people that I interview. And one is, what are you obsessed with at the moment?
Oh, what am I obsessed with at the moment? This is going to sound crazy. So I went to New York earlier this month and I got very concerned because the week before all the Iran stuff happened, and I was terrified that something was going to happen and I was going to have no survival skills, that something would happen to me. And I panicked because I'm like, oh my God, like I don't know what I'm doing. So I've been watching a lot of Survivor Man and Alone, which I don't know if you have that.
I don't know that one.
No, so they're TV shows of people who go out into the woods with nothing but a camera. Like there's no crew, it's just them and a camera, and they survive off the land. Like that's it. The whole idea is to survive as long as possible, just eating plants and hunting and all these sorts of things. Because I was so terrified of something happening. I was like, I really don't think I'd know how to fend for myself. So I've been watching kind of as research. So I've been watching a lot of that recently. Yeah, that's what I'm obsessed with.
Oh, I was recovering from an operation like for the past nine weeks. And so I was like, okay, that's enough Netflix. But I was obsessed with the new show, the Pandemic. There's a new series out, which is all about like when the next pandemic is on. And it's just very timely that they put that out at the moment with the coronavirus. So
You know what? Now that you say that, I think I've heard of that. Oh man, that's funny. Okay, so we're on the same page, is what I'm hearing. We're both a little paranoid. I see.
Yeah, yes. So don't worry.
Oh, that makes me happy. Okay, good.
So another question I ask everybody is, what's one song that changed your life?
Oh, one song that changed my life. I had a really big emo phase in college. I went really dark there for a while, and the first time I had like a really big heartbreak. There was this song called, I think it's called Naive Orleans, that a friend of mine had recommended to me because she had gone through some heartbreak, and she kind of knew I was, using music as a therapy tool sort of thing. And the words of it were something along the lines of like, you're better off without him, and like it wasn't really what it seemed to be, and all that sort of thing. And it was something she didn't push on me to say, hey, you should listen to this because it's very applicable to the thing. It was just, hey, this is a great song, I think you'll appreciate. And the fact that it was one of those moments where I realized, music really does have its moment for everything, that there's really a song for every occasion, for every emotion, and all of that. And singing that and having the catharsis of singing that over and over and over was something that really helped in times of pain, because sometimes I wanted to feel something other than pain. And when singing, it did subside a little bit. I felt something different in my body.
Yeah. Oh, great. My last question to you. The name of this podcast is One Voice Can Change the World. And what does that mean to you?
That means everything. I mean, that's why I teach people to do what they do. And my sort of motto is, your voice matters, share it. Because there's something about the way that you speak, the way that you share an idea or your story, even if it's identical to somebody else, there's something about the way you share it that's going to land differently for somebody. Maybe you explain it a little bit differently. Maybe your voice, the timbre of your voice, just resonates with somebody differently because it reminds them of their mom, or you know what I mean? Like there's just always something that you've heard 7,000 times that when you hear it just that one more time from somebody else, it makes all the difference. And so as many times as we like to tell ourselves, oh, it's been said before, or what I have to say isn't important, or something like that, it truly is. It truly is so important. And it's not necessarily the world so much as someone's world. I mean, we go through our lives every day, just kind of doing our own thing. And we look at traffic around us as cars, not as people living their lives. And so we get mad and, do all these things. But the reality is that there's more to the world than just our little bubble and us in our little car. Like that person has a family. That person's probably late. Maybe that person's really stressed out. Maybe that person's going through heartache. Like you don't know what other people are going through. So your world is very, very small if you don't think of it that way. And the fact that you could possibly impact somebody on that deep, deep level. I mean, I've had people say things to me countless times that have truly changed me, that have truly like just changed the way that I think about something, or that I see something or somebody as a result. And to have that power with somebody else, not in a manipulative way, but in a inspirational and motivational way, I think is completely invaluable.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story, Gina.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Tina. I really love it.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm really glad that you have, found your calling, and helping people with their communication. I think you're just going to be so wonderful at and helping so many people just communicate better. It's so important, especially as entrepreneurs.
It's something that I realized a lot of people struggle with. And because it's something that I realized because of music, is something that I was strong at. I mean, when you sing classical music, you're not singing in English. So you need to find other ways to connect with people, right? This is the same sort of thing. Like that's what I realized in hindsight. This was really all about for me. That's what music is. It was a way to connect to people that I struggled with before. And it's like, okay, now that I understand that, I can translate that into this new space, and I can see all of that performance training and vocal lessons and all of that, not as a waste of time or deviation from where I've headed. It was truly one other tool that I get to have that makes my coaching a little bit more unique compared to somebody else.
Yeah, so exciting.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And where can people follow you? What links do you want to share with us?
Yeah, so my website obviously is always a good place to reach me and to email me, ginamolinari.com. I spend the most time on Facebook, so it's facebook.com/theginamo. And Instagram, I'm starting to get better about using Instagram, which is also at the Gina Mo.
Oh, great. And no TikTok yet.
I can't.
I know, I'm the same way. It's like, oh, do I have to learn another way to,
I don't have the bandwidth right now. Maybe in the future. I just do not have the bandwidth right now.
I know, exactly the same with me. So I'm still learning. I don't know how far I'm going to get into it, but yeah, it's fun watching my son doing his TikTok stuff and seeing what he creates. But I think I'm not cool enough for that, the way that he does it. He's 13 now, so
Mom.
yes.
Mom.
Well, thank you again, Gina, and I can't wait to see what else you create and what else you start evolving into. And I'm so proud of you to see you grow and to inspire other people. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, there you go, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that episode with Gina. And if you want to improve on your communication skills, please reach out to her. She's such a wonderful coach. Now, just a quick reminder that I'll be singing for Sharon Canetta as her backing vocalist. She is a celebrity in the Philippines. She has her own TV show. She's celebrating her 40 years in showbiz, and I'm really excited to be part of her backing vocal team at Blacktown Workers Club in April. So if you want to go there, tickets are still available. Reach out to me if you want to know how to get tickets. And also, just a super quick reminder that my Singing Mastery Masterclass is available only until April. So if you want to go and watch it, please go visit the link that I'll share in the show notes, and you can see how you can skyrocket your voice and your performances. So in the meantime, I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening again today. See you next time.